Human uses earth plants to heal. Law. Plasma rifle butt cracked against Grant's ribs with enough force to send him sprawling across the polished blood from his split lip painted crimson droplets on the black stone as he pushed himself, using to stay down despite the throbbing. Stay down, human filth, growled Tower Shadow. Grant spat blood and looked up, meeting the alien's 4 golden eyes with unflinching defiance. The throne room of the Celestial Empire stretched endlessly above him, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadows that seemed to absorb the ethereal blue light emanating from floating crystal formations. Dozens of court officials in flowing robes watched from the periphery, their whispered conversations creating a susurrus of alien syllables that echoed off the wall. Bring the prisoner forward, command. Weight of 2 guards hauled Grant to his feet, their grip like steel clamps on his arm. His torn agricultural uniform hung in tatters, exposing the network of cuts and bruises he'd accumulated during New Terra's final hours. The memory of his colony burning, of families he'd failed to save, fueled the fire in his dark eyes as he was dragged toward the massive throne that dominated the chamber's far. Emperor Valen sat rigid upon his seat of carved bone and precious metals. His pale blue skin seemed elaborate ceremonial armor covered his lean frame, and a crown of twisted silver held back his. But Grant's attention wasn't. To the right of the throne, on what appeared to be a medical platform that hummed with sophisticated technology, lay the most beautiful woman Grant had ever seen. Princess Lyriax's skin held the same blue tint as her father's, but where his was pale and cold, hers seemed to shimmer with warmth despite her obvious illness. Silver hair spread across the platform like spun moonlight, and her features, high cheekbones, full lips, delicate pointed ears, would have been perfect if not for the gray pallor. This is the human? Emperor Valen's voice carried disappointment. This broken creature led the resistance that cost us 3 battalions. Grant straightened despite his bonds, drawing on reserves of strength. Your Majesty, he said, his voice hoarse but steady. I'm just a farmer who got tired of watching you burn his crop. A ripple of shocked murmur. Captain Thane's weapon, but the Emperor raised a finger to stop. Farmer, tell me, farmer, what grows in soil watered with the blood of my soul? Same thing that grows in soil watered with the blood of my... The Emperor's expression didn't change, but something flicked. From the medical platform came a sound that made Grant's chest tighten. A soft, Your Majesty, interrupted Chief Court Physician, elongated skull gleaming under the chambers. We shouldn't waste time with this primate. The princess grows weaker by the hour, and we have exhausted all conventional. Grant's attention snapped to the dying princess, and his agricultural training kicked in automatic. Even from this distance, he could see the telltale signs, the slightly yellow tinge to her fingernails, the way her breathing hitched at regular intervals, the subtle tremor in her hands. He'd seen these symptoms before, not in people, but in plants affected by specific alkaloid poison. What are her symptoms? Taking a step forward despite the guard's attempts to restrain. Silent! Morvek's voice cracked. Dare suggest that your barbaric knowledge could succeed where the finest medical minds in the galaxy have failed? But Grant was studying Lyriax's face, noting the pattern of her distress, the way her body seemed to fight against itself. His grandmother's voice echoed, lessons learned in her herb garden on wisdom passed down through generations of healers who had worked with nature. And the tremor in her hand, ignoring Morvek's sputtered protests. Does it worsen? And her breathing? Does the difficulty come in waves, roughly every... Emperor Valen's posture, a subtle change that nonetheless commanded Grant met the Emperor's gaze steadily. Because I've seen it before, Your Majesty. Not a plant. The symptoms match alkaloid poisoning from a specific family of compounds. On Earth, we learned to counter them using... Preposterous. Morvek's forearm. Our most advanced scanners have detected no known toxins. This human speaks nonsense. Your scanner. His voice gaining strength as pieces fell into place. They look for synthetic compounds, don't they? Chemical signatures that match your databases. But this isn't synthetic, it's organic, probably plant-based, and it's designed to mimic natural cellular process. The throne room fell into absolute silence except for the soft whisper of Lyriax's. Grant could feel dozens of alien eyes focused on him, could sense the weight of skepticism and desperate hope warring in the air. Emperor Valen stood, his imposing figure casting long shadows across. Claim you can heal my daughter with your primitive earth knowledge? Grant looked again, noting how, even in her weakened state, her eyes seemed to track their conversation with sharp intelligence. Something passed between them, a recognition perhaps, or simply the shared understanding of two beings caught in circumstance. I don't know, but I know plants, Your Majesty. I know how they poison and how they heal. And if someone wanted to create a toxin that your advanced medicine couldn't detect, they'd use something organic, something that works with the body's natural processes rather than against. And you have access? Grant's bound hands moved to the survival kit still strapped to his belt, somehow overlooked during his cap. His fingers found the small held his most precious possessions. Seeds from Earth. carried across the galaxy as I have the knowledge to use. The Emperor's gaze moved to his dying daughter, then back. In that look, Grant saw not the ruler of a galactic empire, but a father watching his child slip. Captain Thane, Valen's voice cutting through the tension, removed. The metal restraints fell away from Grant's wrists with a soft click, leaving angry red marks on his skin. He rubbed the circulation back into his hands while every eye in the throne room remained fixed. The weight of their attention almost physical. "State your terms," he said, his voice carefully neutral despite the desperation Grant could see. Grant stepped closer to Princess Lyriax's medical platform, ignoring the subtle shift of guards. The sophisticated machinery surrounding her hummed with quiet efficiency, monitoring vital signs that painted a grim picture across holographic displays. But it was her face that held. Even weakened by illness, her features carried an intelligence that made his chest tight. "I need space to work," voice gaining confidence. "A place where I can grow. Your people will want to analyze everything. I can't work under that." "Impossible." Chief Physician Morv, his forearms gesturing dismay. "Cannot allow unchecked experimentation on the royal person. Every treatment must be documented. Then she dies." Grant cut him off bluntly, turning to face the assassin. "Because what I'm proposing isn't medicine as you understand it. It's symbiosis. Plant and animal working together the way they were meant to. Not the sterile separation your technology." Princess Lyriax stirred on her platform, her silver eyes opening to focus on Grant with start. When she spoke, her voice carried the same authority as her father. What would you need?" Grant found himself stepping closer, drawn by something in her gaze that spoke of curiosity. "A greenhouse. Basic growing. Freedom to use traditional Earth methods without a ghost of a smile. "You mean effect," surprised by the warmth in his own. "Your people have spent so long trying to control nature that you've forgotten how to work. Plants don't respond to commands or logic. They respond to need, to balance, to understand." Emperor Valen moved to stand beside his daughter's platform, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in a gesture that revealed the depth of his love despite. "And in exchange for this cooperation, the surviving colonists from New Terra, safe passage to neutral space. You would trade the life of my daughter for the lives of your people?" Valen. Grant shook. "I'm offering to save your daughter." Lyriax's breathing hitched and several monitors began chiming. Morvek rushed to adjust. Grant growing under the alkaloid whatever's causing this, it's accelerating. He has maybe 48 hours. Throne room erupted in whispered conversation as courtiers processed this pronouncement. Grant could see skepticism warring with desperation on but it was Lyriax herself. "Father," voice barely audible above hum. "Let him try." Emperor Valen was silent for long moments, his gaze moving between his dying daughter. When he finally spoke, his words absolute. "Royal advisor," called to an elderly figure. "What does imperial law say about medicines of The old advisor stepped forward, "Your Majesty, the codes of succession allow for any measures deemed necessary to preserve the royal blood. However," he paused meaningfully, "they also contain provisions regarding those who successfully heal member fam." "What provision?" Though something in Eldric's tone made him suspect he might not. "Law of binding debt." Carefully. "Anyone who saves the life of a royal heir becomes bound to their service. In the case of the heir apparent," he glanced meaning, "the bond becomes that of royal consort." Grant felt the blood drain from his face. "Consort?" "Husband," Lyriax said softly, her eyes never law. The throne room fell into absolute. Grant stared at the dying princess, his mind racing through implications he hadn't considered. Everything he'd known about his life, his freedom, suddenly hung in the balance of a single decision. "Your Majesty," he said finally, his voice steady despite the chaos in his thoughts, "I need those greenhouse facilities immediately." Emperor Valen's smile. "Captain Thane will escort you to the royal gardens. You have 48 hours, human. Save my daughter, and you may find your primitive methods have earned you more than you bargained." As guards moved to escort him from the throne room, Grant caught Lyriax's eyes, something understanding, perhaps, or simply acknowledgement of the precipice they both. "I'll need to examine her more closely," voice carrying implication, "to understand exactly what." Lyriax's cheeks colored slightly despite. "Then I suppose you'd better." The royal gardens sprawled across several acres of carefully maintained each one a masterpiece of environmental control. Grant stood in the center of the largest, surrounded by alien flora that defied every principle of Earthbot. Crystalline trees stretched toward artificial suns, while phosphorescent flowers pulsed with their own inner light, creating a symphony of color. "This will do," he told Cap. "The Emperor expects regular report. Any attempt to escape." "Where would I go?" Grant interrupted, pulling the pressure vibe. "Even if I could get off." He opened the metal tin with reverent, revealing dozens of small seeds nested. Each one represented years of careful selection and storage, varieties chosen for their hardiness, their medicinal properties, their ability to adapt to alien soil. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory as he identified each species by touch. "These look dead, dormant," Grant life waiting. The next several hours passed in focused labor as Grant prepared growing using a combination of earth tech. The soil composition required careful adjustment. Alien minerals that could poison Earth plants had to be neutralized while beneficial delicate work that demanded absolute. As he worked, medical attendants brought regular updates on Port painted a grimmer picture. Her breathing was becoming more labored, and the tremors in her hands had spread to her arm. Grant found himself pushing harder, staying focused despite the growing pressure. The princess has requested court messenger, just as Grant found Lyriax in her private chambers, a luxurious suite that somehow managed to feel warm, despite she was sitting up in bed, looking stronger than she had in the throne room, though Grant could see the effort it cost. I wanted to thank voice-carrying Jen. Save your thanks until we know if this works. Surprised by how natural it felt to be alone. About gesturing toward the small. What makes them special? Grant found himself relaxing as he explained the properties of willow bark, the healing compounds in echinacea, the enzyme inhibitors found in certain ferns. Lyriax listened with an intensity that made his chest warm, asking questions that revealed a sophisticated understanding. Your people abandoned, not abandoned, replaced. We found faster ways, more predictable, but sometimes the old ways understand. Lyriax was quiet, studying his face with those remarks. What will happen if you say? Question hung between them, load quite ready to address. Grant thought about the life he'd never chosen, but might soon be bound. I don't know. I've never been anyone's husband, let alone, and I've never been anyone's wife. The arranged marriages were always political. Never. Something in her tone made Grant look up sharply. Work canceled. No one wants to bind their house. Bitterness in her voice stirred something protective in Grant's chest. You're not dying. Not if I can help. She smiled then, the first genuine expression of happiness. Is that a promise? It's a commitment more than he'd expect. As he prepared to leave, Lyriax caught her touch was warm despite her illness, and Grant felt something Grant doing. It's not just about you. Grant looked down at surprised by how right it felt. No. 3 days into treatment, Grant's makeshift laboratory had become the most watched location in the palace. His earth plants were thriving in their alien soil, their familiar green leaves, a stark contrast to the bioluminescent flora surrounding. More importantly, Princess Lyriax was showing her first signs of her tremors have decreased by 30%. Respiratory function has improved as well. Grant nodded absently, his attention focused on preparing the next phase. The willow bark extract had successfully countered the initial alkaloid poisoning, but the underlying cause remained. Something was still generating toxins in her system, and until he could identify the source, any improvement. I need to examine her again, he told Captain, his constant shadow. More thoroughly. Thane's expression dark. You've already spent hours alone. Court is beginning to talk. Let them talk, Grant replied. Gather. Their gossip won't save her life. Found Lyriax in the garden pavilion where she'd been looking stronger than she had since his arrival. Color had returned to her blue-tinted skin, and her silver eyes held their full spark. She wore a simple gown that accentuated her alien beauty, while allowing easy access to the pulse. Monitored her condition. You look better, he said, settling beside. I feel better, then caught it, but that's not what's got. Grant met her gaze, noting how her pupils dilated slightly. The attraction between them had been growing stronger with each, an undercurrent of desire that neither had. I think the toxin is being generated internal, forcing himself to focus on medicine, rather than the warmth of her fingers against his. Something in your system is creating the alkaloids, which means external. Lyriax's grip on saying I'm poisoning myself. I'm saying something inside, a parasite, maybe, or some kind of symbiotic organism that's been altered. Grant turned, studying the delicate tracery of veins beneath her skin. I need to understand your physiology better, map how your systems interact with the toxin. What would that? Grant felt heat rise in his cheeks. Physical contact, sustained contact, to monitor how your body responds. It would be. Lyriax was quiet for long moments, her thumb tracing small circles on his palm. The court already assumes we're lovers. My spending so much time alone with you, your hands on my body. Are you bothered by what they? She looked up at him then, her silver eyes reflecting depth. I'm bothered by the fact that they might be right. The admission hung. Grant felt his pulse quick closer, her alien beauty somehow more compelling than any. My friends call me Lyri. We should, even as the political complications, the consort law, the law that makes you mine if you seriously smile. Before Grant could respond, she closed the distance. Her lips were softer than he'd imagined, tasting of alien fruits and something indefinably sweet. The kiss started gentle, but quick as weeks of suppressed attraction finally found expression. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Grant could see his own desire reflect along with the treat can wait another few minutes. Grant didn't protest. Hands tangled in her silver hair as she pressed against him, her body warm and pliant. Pavilion's alien flower bright as if responding to their passion. I need you to know that whatever happens, whatever the law says, this is. Grant pulled back to studying determination along. And if I can't say, then at least I'll have had. Her hands moving to the fast. Have had. Grant caught her hands, stilling them despite every instinct screaming. I will save. I promise. Then save, guiding, but love. As Grant's fingers worked at the delicate fast, couldn't shake the feeling that he was crossing more than just a physical threat. With each inch of blue-tinted skin, soft gasps. He was binding himself to her, nothing, and for the first time he found himself not. Grant woke to the sound of shattering glass and Leary's. In the pre-dawn darkness of her chambers, shadowy figures moved with lethal precision, their weapons gleaming in the artificial moonlight strands crystal windows. "Stay down," he hissed, rolling off the bed and grabbing the ceremonial sword from the wall. The assassins wore the models, but their movements fluid. Two practiced weren't palace. Grant parried a plasma energy weapon, searing the air inches from while Leary scrambled for the emergency. The treatments. One assassin. Destroy every. Grant's blood ran cold as he realized the true target. They weren't just trying to kill Leary. They were trying to eliminate any chance of her recovery. His makeshift lab, carefully cultivated plants, everything he'd built to save. The guard driving his sword. They're after the guard. Leary's fingers found the alarm, and immediately the palace erupted in sirens and flashing lights. But even as genuine guards thundered, Grant could see smoke rising from the direction of the royal guard. "Too late," laughed the lead assassin, pulling back from his attack. "The princess will die as planned, and your primitive That's when it hit Grant with the force of a physical. The timing, the sophistication, the way it had resisted every response. "You created the plague," falling into place with horrifying clarity. It was never natural. The assassin's pause confirmed his suspicion. "Clever human. Yes, the bioweapon was our design. Undetectable by imperial medicine, fatal within months, but slow enough to avoid suspicion." Who? Clutching a sheet, palace guards fine. But Grant was thinking fast, mind racing through implications. Someone who knew your someone who could predict exactly how your physicians would respond. He turned to Leary, his expression grim. "Someone who wanted to make sure you die before any succession ceremonies could take place." Princess Kestra Leary. The assassin's laugh confirmed her guess. "The rightful heir will not be denied by a dying." Captain Thane's arrival with a full squad ended the immediate threat, but Grant barely noticed as the assassins were subdued. His mind was fixed on a more terrible. The immunity urgently grabbed. "The treatments didn't just cure you, they made you immune to the bioweapon. That's why they had to strike now, before you could reproduce." Leary's eyes widened. "The enzyme inhibitors from your plants. They bonded, which mean that your blood, your genetic material, anyone with access to your blood." The implications crashed over them both. The ancient consort law wasn't just about genetic lineage, about ensuring the royal blood, and now that bloodline to defeating a potentially devastate the law, Leary whispered. "It doesn't just make you my husband." Royal advisor Eldrick appeared as ancient faith. "Your Majesty," he said, using her formal title for the first time since Grant had known. "The Emperor has been informed of tonight's events. He requests your immediate presence in the throne." As they dressed hurriedly, Grant caught. She looked stronger, more regal, but there was fear. "What are you thinking? That everything just changed?" Her voice. "I'm no longer just the sick princess you're trying to save. I'm potentially the key to preventing a galactic." Grant moved behind. In the mirror, their reflection looked like something from an alien, bound together by forces. "And I'm no longer just a captured farmer trying to bargain. No, back. You're the man who holds the future of the Empire in his earth-grown." As they prepared to face whatever awaited, Grant couldn't shake the story he'd thought a simple track had just revealed itself to be something far more complex. Real game. Throne room had been transformed into a war. Holographic displays showed star maps with red zones indicating potential bioweapon targets, while military advisors debated response strategies. At the center of it all, Emperor Valen stood with the bearing of a man who had just realized his empire bowed. "Princess Kestra has declared herself regent without preamble, as she claims Lyriax's illness makes her unfit and that my judgment has been compromised by desperate." Grant felt Leary stiffen. "How many houses support her claim?" 17 of the major bloodlines. Advisor Eld. "They believe you're still dying and that I've been deceived by human trick. Then we show them the truth. Kestra's supporters control the communication. Any evidence we present will be dismissed as." The Emperor's pale eyes found. "Unless we can provide undeniable proof of both the cure and the Captain Thane stepped. "Your Majesty, we've analyzed the destroyed garden. The sabotage was precise. Only the earth plants were targeted. They knew exactly what to eliminate. Inside information. Click someone on your medical intelligence to Kestra's fact. Physician Morv." He opposed Guinea. Before anyone could respond, alarmed, a communications officer rushed his face. "Your Majesty, we're receiving reports from the outer colonies. The plague has appeared on 7. The throne room fell silent, except for the mechanical hum of the holographic display. Grant watched as red dots spread across the star map like blood drops, each one representing millions. Accelerating the time. Kestra isn't just trying to claim the throne, she's demonstrating the bioweapon. But why? If she has the cure? She does. The immunity came from the interaction between your specific biology and my earth. It can't be replicated without both elements. Emperor Valen's expression, which means she needs you alive to create the cure. But power. Consort law. Advisor Eldrick added, Lyriax dies before the binding ceremony. Any immunity dies, but if the ceremony is completed, then Grant becomes legally bound. Blood. Even if I were to die later, be compelled by law to serve the Emperor. Grant felt the walls closing in around. Every choice seemed to lead to the same. His freedom but look, seeing the fear and determination warring in her silver eyes, he realized his choice had been made days ago in a garden. When can we perform? The question caught everyone by surprise. Leary turned, lips parted. Grant, you don't have. Yes, not because of the law, not because of political necessity, because 17 worlds are dying, and you and I together might save. The ancient ceremony requires 3 days of preparation. The circumstances, we don't have 3 days. Every hour we delay, more. He looked between Grant and his daughter, something shifting in his There is a precedent for emergency binding. It requires only the principals, 2 witnesses, and the exchange of essence. Grant felt heat rise. The exchange of essence was a euphemistic term for the physical consummation that would genetically bind. Father Leary protested. The ceremony can be private, but it must be witnessed. And after, Grant asked what happened. Safe passage to neutral space. Have an explosion somewhere in the palace complex shook the throne room, sending several courtiers through the crystal windows. Grant could see the glow of fire. Kestra's forces are moving faster than anticipated, Thane reported, consulting his tactical display. We have perhaps hours before they reach the palace. Grant his own. Then, are you certain? Grant thought of his grandmother's garden, of the simple life he'd planned to build, freedom he was about to sack. Then he thought of the woman before him who had somehow become more. I've never been more certain. As palace guards rushed to secure the throne room for an impromptu royal wedding, Grant caught no regrets, only that we're doing this because we have instead of because we want. Who says we can't want it too? The emergency binding ceremony had taken place in the royal chambers at dawn, witnessed only by Emperor Valen and advisor Eldred. Now, 3 hours later, Grant stood before the assembled representatives of 17 noble houses in the palaces, aware that the golden band on his finger felt alien, its weight a constant reminder of vows spoken in desperation and passion. Beside him, Leary wore matching rings and the formal robes but Grant could see the satisfied flush still colored the way she moved with newfound. Honored delegates, Emperor Valen, you have come to witness proof of our claims regarding both the cure and the assembled nobles shifted rests. Many wore the purple sashes, indicating support for Princess Kestra's rebellion, while Grant this demonstration would determine whether the Empire unified against. Grant moved to the first patient, a young servant who had volunteered to be infected with the bio. The man's symptoms matched Leary's early stages: trembling hands, labored breathing, the telltale pallor of alkaloid poison. The traditional treatment, preparing a syringe of the Empire's state. The injection brought temp, but within minutes the symptoms returned with increased severity. Murmurs rippled through the audience as the demonstration confirmed what many had suspected. Their advanced medicine was help. Now Grant Garden set up the earth-based. He selected willow bark and echinacea extracts with practiced precision, combining them with enzyme inhibitors derived from his carefully cultivated fern. Preparation took several, during which skeptical whispered, primitive superstition. The princess was never truly ill. Grant ignored the commentary, focusing on the delicate balance of the difference between life. When he finally administered, change was dramatic. The servant's breathing eased, his tremors stilled, and color returned to his. More importantly, follow-up blood tests showed complete neutralization of the toxin. Not temporary suppression, but Observe preparing a second dose of the bioweapon, the immunity. He injected the servant again, and this time there were no symptoms at all. The man's enhanced immune system, primed by the earth compounds, neutralized the toxin before it could take hold. The amphitheater erupted in shocked conversation. Several delegates leaned forward for closer examination, while others exchanged meaning. The treatment requires specific compounds found only in earth flora, compounds that interact uniquely with the royal bloodline to create conveniently, called out a voice from the back. Compounds controlled entire claims to be our princess. Grant had been which is why out a seed. I'm distributing seeds and cultivation instructions to every house represent. The announcement caused another stir. Several delegates who had been leaning toward Kestra's faction each of you will be able to grow these remedies independently. Cure belongs to the Empire, but the immunity, pressed another delegate, that requires the royal blood. Grant felt her fingers intertwining with his own. Which is why the consort law exists, she said, to ensure that genetic immunity, the political implication to everyone present. Any house that opposed the legitimate royal line now risked being excluded from the genetic immunity essential for. You offer us one of Kestra's strong, but what assurance do we have that these will grow in alien soil? That your primitive methods will work for anyone besides yourself? Grant smiled. Because I've been teaching your own botany. On cue, several palace gardeners entered the amphitheater carrying thriving earth plants grown in various alien soil. Each one bore the distinct markers of successful adaptation: robust growth, healthy coloration, and most importantly, active production of the medicinal compound. The knowledge spread. Within months, every world its own earth gardens, its own. The demonstration had effect. Even the most skeptical delegates were forced to acknowledge the reality of both the threat and the. Importantly, Grant could see the political calculations shifting as nobles reassessed. There is one more thing. Her voice carried. The bioweapon attacks aren't random. Analysis of the affected worlds shows a clear pattern. All are systems loyal to my father. She activated a holographic display forming an pattern. Princess Kestra isn't trying to save the empire, using the plague to eliminate political opposition while positioning herself as the sole source of the revelation sent shockwaves. Several purple-sash delegates quietly, while others began urgent whispered conferences with their advisors. As the demonstration concluded and delegates filed out to consider, Grant felt they had won this battle. But the war was far. Think it worked? Look around, she replied, gesturing to the delegates who were already requesting seed samples and cultivation. Half of Kestra's supporters just switched sides, and the other half? Leary's expression grew serious. Fight harder than ever. Desperate, as if summoned by Captain Thane, your Majesty, joint title, we've received word from the outer defenses. Princess Kestra's fleet has been spotted. Grant felt, how long? 18 hours, assuming they may. Grant looked around the amphitheater, at the evidence of their success and the seeds of hope. 18 hours to prepare for a war that would determine not just their own fate, but the future of billions of lives across seven. Then we'd better get ready. Surprised by how the demonstration now came. Princess Kestra's flagship emerged from hyperspace like a predator scenting blood. The massive dreadnought bristled with weapons that could level cities, while its escort fleet spread across the system in a formation designed for maximum. Grant watched from the palace's strategic command center as tactical displays painted their hopeless situation in stark. 200 ships against our forts brought enough firepower to crack the planet. It won't, Leary said with quiet certainty, studying the fleet disposition with tact. Hadn't suspected. She needs the palace intact. Needs me alive to legitimize her. Emperor Valen moved between the display, his commands orchestrating defensive preparations across the. Kestra has agreed to single combat under the old law. Champion against champion, winner takes the throne. Grant felt, you're not seriously considering. She's challenged your right to consort. According to imperial law, you must defend that right personally or for. Grant's stomach twisted as he processed. Single combat? He was a farmer, not a warrior, and now the fate of the empire hung on his ability to face. Glanced at Leary, her silver eyes wide with worry but steady. I'm no fighter, but I won't let Kestra take you or the Emperor. Leary stepped. You don't have to. We're in. Emperor Valen's gaze soft voice remained steel. The law is the champion's duel must be fought by the consort. If you refuse, Kestra's claim to the throne strength dies with Captain Thane standing nearby. The champion is General Varkas, a veteran of the Christ. He's killed men in duels for less than a throne. Grant's jaw. Then I'll need a crash course in not dying. You've already beaten impossible odds, Grant. You saved me when no one else could. You'll find. The command center buzzed with activity as advisors relayed orders to the planet's defenses. Grant felt the weight of every human, an outsider, now tasked with defending an alien. He wasn't sure if he was more terrified or the fact that he'd started to care about this strange shimmer. The palace's training arena was a stark contrast to the lush cold metal walls reflected the harsh light of artificial suns, and the air smelled of ozone and Captain Thane stood opposite Grant, holding a plasma blade that hummed. Varkas will try to overwhelm you with strength, demonstrating a quick slash. He's fast for his size, but you're smaller. Grant gripped his own training blade, its weight I'm used to pruning branches, not fighting General. Thane's golden eyes. Focus. You're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting for her. Grant nodded, picturing Leary's way her touch had anchored him through every impossible. He parried the impact, jarring his arm, but good, Thane grunted. But Varkas won't hold back, he'll aim to kill. As they trained, Leary and royal robes replaced with she carried a small case, and her expression was all business. I've been analyzing the bioweapons spread, she said. Kestra's targeting only loyalist worlds, but the plague's mutating faster than we expect. Grant lowered his breath. Can the Earth plants keep up? They can, opening the case to reveal vials. Your enzyme inhibitors are working, but we need to mass produce them now. I've sent instructions to every loyalist world to start growing your seeds. Thane raised an eye. And if Kestra's forces intercept those ships, then we fight to protect them. Grant's duel buys us time, but the real war is for the cure. Grant wiped sweat. So no pressure then. Just save the princess, the empire, and beat a war. Leary's lips curved. You've handled work. The duel was set for dawn in the palace's Grand Colosseum, a massive open-air structure where thousands of nobles and citizens. Holographic screens broadcast the event across, ensuring every world saw the out. Grant stood in the center of the arena, his borrowed armor feeling too tight, the plasma blade heavy at his side. Across from him, General Varkas loomed like a mountain, his blue skin scarred from countless battles, 4 golden eyes gleaming. Leary watched from the royal balcony, her hands gripping. Emperor Valen stood beside her, his face unreadable. while advisor Eldrick whispered updates about Kestra's. The air crackled with tension as the crowd's human. Varkroft, you think your dirt tricks can challenge the Empire's might? Grant steady. Remember, I think you're scared of what a farmer. The crowd gasped, and Varkus's eyes narrowed. The signal sounded, and he charged, his plasma blade a blur of dead. Grant dodged, his smaller frame letting him slip under the first strike. The blade grazed his armor, leaving a scorched mark, countered with a quick slash, but Varkus parried effortlessly, his strength. You're out of your depth, pressing forward with a Grant's arms burned as he blocked, his feet scrambled. The crowd roared, some cheering for Varkus. Others, surprising, caught a glimpse of her silver eyes locked, and he wasn't just fighting for Sir, he was fighting for her. Varkus lunged, aiming. Instead of dodging, Grant dropped low, rolling under the strike and slicing at Varkus. The blade connected, drawing a thin line. The general roared, stumbling slightly in the crowd's noise. First blood to the human! Varkus's fury exploded. He swung his blade in a wide arc, forcing Grant to leap back. The general's size was his advantage, but Grant noticed something. Varkus favored his right side, his movements slightly slower. Thane's words echoed, "Use your nimbleness." Grant feinted right, then darted left, slashing at Varkus's exposed flank. The blade bit into armor, not deep enough to wound, but enough to throw Varkus off balance. Grant pressed the advantage, his strikes quick and precise, targeting joints and weak points. Varkus's attacks grew wilder, his frustration. "You can't win!" Varkus bellowed. Grant ducked, the blade whistling over his head, and drove his own weapon into Varkus's shoulder, where armor met flesh. The general staggered. His blade dropped. Grant kicked it away, standing over his opponent. "Chest." "Yield," Grant said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. Varkus glared but sank. The Colosseum erupted in cheers, the sound deafening. Grant looked up at Pride. Emperor Val silencing the crowd. "The consort has proven his right. Challenge is end." In the aftermath, the palace buzzed with new energy. Kestra's fleet, expecting an easy victory, hesitated when news of Varkus's defeat spread. Grant and Leary worked tirelessly in the royal gardens, overseeing the distribution of earth seeds and training botanists to cultivate. Cure was spreading faster than the plague, thanks to Leary's strategic plan. In the War Council chamber, Emperor Valen reviewed reports of Kestra. "Her allies are abandoned. The demonstration and your duel shifted the tide." Grant stood beside Leary, their hands clasped. "What about Morv? He's the one who fed Kestra. Arrest." He confessed to sabotaging the gardens and leaking Leary's medical records. "He's awaiting trial." Leary's jaw tightened, and Kestra fleeing to the outer rim. Her rebellion is crumbling, but she's still dangerous. Grant felt a pang of unease. Kestra's bioweapon had been stopped, but her ambition still. He focused. Leary was alive, the Empire was stabilized. Later, in the quiet of the royal gardens, Grant and Leary walked among the thriving. The bioluminescent flowers glowed softly, casting patterns. She stopped beside a clustered fingers brush. "You changed everything," she said. "Not just for me, but for the Grant shrugged, a shy. "I just did what I know. Plants, soil, life, it's all connected, no matter the plant." Leary stepped closer, her silver eye. "And us? Are we connected?" Grant's heart skipped. He thought of the vows they'd made in the nights they'd shared since. "I didn't expect to find. I thought I was just saving now." Imagine. She smiled. "Then don't. The law made you my consort, but I want you as my part." He kissed her then, slow and deep. The garden's alien beauty wrapped. The Empire still faced challenges. Kestra's lingering threat, the plague's aftermath, the delicate balance of first time, Grant felt not just to a cause, but to someone who saw him as months later, the Empire had stabilized. Earth gardens bloomed on every loyalist world, producing cures that stopped the plague in its track. Kestra's rebellion collapsed entirely when her remaining allies surrendered, faced with the undeniable proof of Leary's Grant's role in it. She was captured in a remote system, her bioweapon plans exposed to the galaxy. Grant stood on the palace balcony overlooking the capital's shimmering spire. His people from New Terra had settled in neutral space. Their freedom secured as Valen had promised. Received messages from them, filled with gratitude and stories of new lives. It felt good. But it wasn't Leary. Her royal robes replaced with a simple dress that made her look more like the woman he'd fallen for. "The council just approved funding for Earth-based agricultural schools," she said. "Your knowledge will shape the Empire's future." Grant chuckled. "From prisoner to professor, never saw that." Leaned against him, her warmth ground. "Consort, don't forget." He looked down at her, the golden band on his finger catching the light. They stood together as the sun set, the Empire stretching out. The bioweapon, the rebellion crushed, and the consort law had bound them in ways neither. But beyond the politics and ancient laws, they'd found a partnership forged in crisis, rooted in trust and growing strong. "Think we can handle whatever comes next?" Leary's silver eyes sparked. "Plants and my stubbornness? Kestra never stood a chance." They laughed, the sound carrying into the promised seed, one kiss, one fight.